Greetings ladies and mentalchens, and welcome to my channel, where I like to make audio narrations of various stories from across the internet. In this series we'll be focusing on the web novel There Is No Epic Loot Here, Only Puns, from the website ReUpload. And in this video we'll be doing chapters 40 to 42. I hope that you enjoy. There is no epic loot here, only puns, chapter 40, Seeing the Mushroom for the Forest. Tribute received. Gained common silk satchel, tiffany flower and molly sprout, wood carving of a bird. Delta nodded distractedly as she ran her finger over Fran's screen, the timer near the top slowly counting down to Fran's return. Delta bit her lip, knowing that her friend should be okay, but to watch Cram utterly. She shook her head and focused on the new addition to the menu before her. She lightly pressed her finger onto the screen and the air rippled. Bravery Lance, a powerful form of synchronization of the dungeon core and the boss monster. The exact numbers indicate that Fran's theoretical attack. New, simplified for me. She asked, and the screen shuddered and the letters shifted about. Bravery Lance, a power formed when Delta believed in Fran to adequately protect her. It makes his attack stronger for a short period of time by absorbing the ambient dungeon mana into his weapon. This belief in Fran and the goblin's own willpower caused the system to unlock the feature. It seems that if Fran continues to do and accomplish more, he may continue to unlock more abilities. Delta sighed and the pond room and Waddles idly snoozing in the alcove. Delta paced slightly as she heard this. So my monsters level up. She mused with some thought and returned to the bathroom, patting her mushies as she went. As she held out a hand and the screen opened. I got room upgrades. How do I select the screen to upgrade Fran? Do I need to wait for him to come back? Delta asked aloud, and Dew was quiet for a moment. There is no exact screen for that, and I can see Fran appear in the room upgraded, but it was more passive. There is a feature to dismiss him, but I doubt that is what you need. I don't... Oh. Here is a section. Sir Fran Bacon. Wins 1, losses 1. Achievements 1. 1. Refusal to back down from certain demise. A boss is a boon, and a loyal knight is a blessing. Delta smiled softly as she read the line. There was nothing else, nothing to indicate what Fran could do to earn more powers or achievements, but Delta accepted the fact that the system, if nothing else, was fair to everyone. No one really got a full weight of the benefits when it came to the dungeon, not even the core herself. I can't upgrade his weapon or armor, Delta said absent-mindedly, not without stripping him of his boss status and finding a way to upgrade your rare monster items first of all. I suspect this is another lock in the dungeon system, and it would prevent new dungeons from overdeveloping their first boss into something truly unbeatable. Makes sense. I'd be pissed if the tutorial boss had an endgame secret boss level bullcrap. She mused and eyed the screen again. Then again, who knows what Fran could get if he challenges himself or does enough of these side missions. Maybe the system might upgrade him for me. Delta suggested, and only New binged in response as he wandered off. Delta looked around the empty boss room. She bowed her head and tried her best to smile. You did great. I can't wait to tell you when you come back, Delta said to the empty boss room. She opened her menu and flicked through the room functions. The DP on the items had been nice, and her goblins had already been gone out to collect mission. So there was a soft hum in her voice as she read the list. Fran's boss room. Turn Fran's cave into a proper gateway. It is purely for a dramatic side of Fran, 5 DP. Transform Fran's door into a more strong appearance, 12 DP. Turn the surrounding area into a proper arena seating, 10 DP. Add stone pillar torches to the ring and the room, and then light one by one until they reach Fran's entrance when a challenger enters the room. Fran is a little dramatic, isn't he? 10 DP. Delta smiled at the list. It was all so wonderfully unneeded. Delta ran her finger down the list, unable to hold back and laugh as she purchased them all. Her total DP of 50 dropped with a whine, but Delta just watched with excited eyes as the room shifted. Rudy sliced another cut of her apple. Clean and skinned, it was like some small animal. She sighed with pleasure at the sight and sun tickling her slightly darker skin. It had been quite some time since she had been properly mana-infused. They lounged under the tree, almost directly opposite Delta's dungeon entrance. She made a mental note to bring that girl some stone or wood so she could spruce up the place. The dungeon entrance was like the first impression. It had burned skeletons, blood-soaked wood, or maybe it would be really special, some ominous weather effects that adventurers felt charmed. Rudy had seen many entrances in her career, the odd times that she felt restless and set out on a quest or a small journey. Dungeons that towered over the nearby town or hamlets. Dungeons that were the entire forest. Dungeons that appeared once a month when the drum beat 5 times under the full moon. The places known as dungeons were just the oddest things. They could do so much, and they often did it, well, really weirdly. Some dungeons were gone forever, the way to enter them lost, forgotten, or discarded. Some dungeons discarded people by just giving up and leaving one day. Rudy hadn't seen a dungeon grow legs and storm off, but she had seen them float away, fall into the ocean with some effort, or just vanish. She savoured another bite of the apple, Mrs. Dabagost's gifts, and no one turned down a free treat from Mrs. Dabagost. Movement caught her eye, and she saw Cram's bulky head appear from the entrance. The good sign was that neither men were covered in gore or web, and the second good sign was that Smalls was lecturing the taller man. It was almost in a married sense, but the men had just close relationship that came from nearly dying together several times. Rudy had seen, felt, and hated that kind of bond herself, and she had to respect it. "All right," she said calmly, and both men paused, not seeing her in the shade. They didn't speak, and Rudy chewed her apple. Eyes not blinking, a small knife in her hand peeled the red skin off the apple, the juices leaking down her hand. "Rudy, you were waiting for us." Cram nodded, and Rudy stood up and walked forward softly. Smalls just put his fingers on his chin and relaxed. Rudy smiled. It was a neutral one. "Not exactly. How did it go?" she asked, and the knife cleaned with one swipe of her thumb. "It was good. Never been in a dungeon exactly like that one," Smalls responded when made Cram snort. "Exactly. What about never? Sharing a camp with gobs, cute little challenges, those signboards, and the talking boxes." Cram listed the things with his fingers. Rudy blinked. She slightly slouched posture, disturbed by that she squinted at the 2 men. The wonderful pots, the musical tentacle mushroom, then there was Sir Fran. Smalls finished, and Cram beamed. "Great guy. He got me." He beamed, stretching out his arm in a slow, long, thin cut along his arm. "You fought the boss?" she asked, voice suddenly very quiet. Smalls idly flexed his fingers as Cram met her gaze. "I did. He wanted me to bring my all. The little guy wanted me at my best." He replied gruffly, and Rudy's knife reflectively surfaced, darkened, as if becoming stained. "You killed him," Rudy translated, her hair beginning to move, skin looking slightly darker as a wispy manner curled around her fingers. Smalls moved between them as Cram bared his teeth. Now, before we can start something we regret." Delta complimented us, and the goblins all said how Fran had a time of his life. He'll be back soon. The dungeon held no ill will and congratulated us. Smalls informed Rudy. The breeze grew through the lush meadow where Delta's dungeon rested. Rudy inhaled and crossed her arms. "Can't take you 2 anywhere," she complained. To Cram, who let out his axe handle, grinning. "Says the hovering mother hen." He fired back, and Rudy shot him a cold look. "Yes, well, the dungeon is very interesting. The web alone is lovely. The company was diverse, and I heard some things about the 2nd floor." Smalls smiled as Rudy's attention became focused on him. He tilted his head. "You're rather invested in Delta. Is there something we're missing?" Smalls inquired, which made Rudy turn away, itching her nose. "Delta, she's got a great pond, and her jokes are terrible if the goblins say them right. And you know, she likes the kids in the village." Rudy muttered, and Cram snorted. "Delta is your friend, or someone you can stand, at least," he said mockingly, translated back to her. Rudy's smile appeared. It made Cram pause and try to backpedal. Rudy knew if they did fight honestly, and at the end she was sure that she would win. Smalls and Cram were fantastic fighters and teammates, but Rudy just had one too many things up her sleeve to be called fair. The ability to grow back her fingers for one if she wanted to. Ironically, she sent a silent thanks to her father dearest for the ability to lose more games of Scotch when she was really healthy. Still, those 2 may have also kept things hidden. a trick to utterly send her and her confident ass straight back into the abyss without even so much as a good day. Adventurers were tricky like that. She knew the fact all too well. One good dungeon run, one good skill mutation, or an ability epiphany, and then equals become unequal. It had happened to Rudy a few times. It had been a sour thing to have her pride handed to her with a silver platter, and when the day before she and her companions had been on the same level of skill. Delta mentioned how her second level isn't ready. Poor dear needs trees, apparently. Smalls commented, and Rudy blinked at him, her cheeks going pink. If Quiz had caught her internally monologuing. Trees, Rudy raised an eyebrow as Cram walked towards the clutter of wooden things. He unhooked his axe, and Rudy moved to catch up with him. As a lumberjack, I have to wonder what you can do to help here. I mean, if the dungeon is asking for it, then isn't it half bad that we help out? She said dryly, and Cram took a few practice swings and simply nodded. Rudy nodded back, and with a single flick of her knife, 2 trees groaned and toppled over. But is the lumberjack better than me? She challenged, feeling her blunt demand for some form of success. Graham's yellow eyes widened, and they turned out to be hot and some emotion. One way to find out. For Delta, eh? He grinned, and Ruli's bud sang in response. I guess I'll just sit here and knit myself some pillowcases. Smalls called out dryly and sat on the rock with a grumble. He took out the leather helmet with 2 tusks on either side out of his bag to reach for his needles. Ruli could sense the faint hint of magic about the helmet and knew it was from Fran. It even looked a little like bacon. Smalls paused and looked up at them, not hearing the chopping of wood. He sighed in disgust as both Rudy and Cram waited for him. Fine, on your mark, get ready, go, he shouted, and a tree flew towards him and the forest shuddered. Smalls flexed his fingers, and the web in his hands went taut. The log slowed as the web stretched out and cut the wood into messy chunks, raining splinters down over Smalls' unamused face. Children, overgrown barbarian, children, Smalls said with disgust. Delta was simply waiting for an idea to strike her as one of her goblins returned. So I think if we find Silent Boy in green, we should just give him anything that he wants, because I don't like our chances against him now that I am in a dungeon. Delta sat lazily at the bottom of a pond. New sighed and moved about the pond. Boy in green. Is there some kind of legend about him? Why should we fear a boy in green? Unless he is like Dio, then I understand completely. Delta suddenly bolted straight. My pots, no, my poor pots are in danger. She wailed slightly, and then froze as if something hit her entrance hall floor. Delta moved, and another thump sounded out. Delta burped slightly, and her breath came out as fresh like pine needles. She turned to the corner and froze as trees came flying through the entrance, landing in front of piles of wood, and it was quickly absorbed. She peered out the hole that was her entrance, and she could barely hear voices. It was my one. I cut, not my fault that it landed in my pile. Delta backed away. For her spiders, now there was a demonic lumberjacks fighting for territory outside of her entrance. They sounded demonic as more trees fell. New, is there anything about tree cutters in the fairy tale book? Delta whispered, and New turned to look at her, his blocks blank. Why, yes. There is a tale of 2 legendary tree cutters that removed trees and then drank all night. They end up throwing up all kinds of body waste down the nearest hole. Delta backed up against the wall with another tree flew down. No, I don't want to be a toilet. She crossed her arms and New jingled, and Delta, for a moment, heard the snort of a masculine laughter. She blinked and then turned red. She smacked the screen, making it mid-jingle. It floated to the ground, and for the moment didn't respond. I deserved that, I guess. The trees did eventually stop coming. Ruli popped her head in, and Delta felt warm when Ruli explained that she heard that Delta wanted some trees, and she was going to make the fishing pond amazing for that woman very soon. Her DP had jumped over to 173, and her mana had maxed out and burst over the limit again. 152. Delta waddled off, feeling like she was going to barf if she didn't start spending soon. So she moved down to the second floor, and New appeared again. The Durant tree, all of them, and a few of the stumps have been unlocked and following items. Durant tree, 10 mana. Laurel crown, 3 mana. Minor earth root, 20 mana. Delta began to conjure trees to deflate her mana. It felt like she had eaten far too much, and any more was going to make her honestly sick. The giant jungle room became dotted with about 5 of the trees. It helped to alleviate much of the pressure that Delta didn't want to waste, so she flicked through her menu and with a groan tapped the monster screen to summon another frog tribesman. It appeared slowly, and Delta began to feel the pressure grow again as she made 2 berry bushes on either side of the river to set her mana just at 68, on the safe from the further decay. Delta sighed with relief and turned back to her newest resident. It looked identical to Rail, but it was much bigger. It was about a foot higher than Rail and slightly thicker. Not muscular, but just more mass to its frames. It blinked its eyes and opened. It didn't speak, and Delta gave it a cheery wave. "Hello!" She tried, and the frog blinked faster. It looked down and then around. "Mother," it whispered almost shyly. It seemed to feel awkward as it stood there. Delta opened her mouth, but something occurred to her. The frog called her mother right off the bat. Odd. The voice was not exactly deep like Rail's, but it held a canter that Rail's didn't. "Welcome to the dungeon. I hope you feel happy here." Delta continued, and the frog gave a small smile. It raised its eyes to look in the general direction of Delta before dropping them again. "I will. I know I will." It agreed, and Delta noticed something finally. Something that she didn't really understand when she had given her frog look over. It had 2 pieces of fabrics. One was the loincloth that wrapped around tightly near the upper torso. Also, it protected its modesty. A light bulb clicked in Delta's head. It was actually new, but Delta felt the answer would arrive either way. Unlike the goblins, frog tribesmen are not single-gendered species. This is a common female of the monster family. It seems to outsize the male, but it does not hold too much power, more than the male, so we'd be paying for it, I assume. "Whoa, my first girl monster," Delta muttered, and then shook her head, smiling. "As per tradition, we should give you a name." Delta readied herself for the argument the frog would have, like Rail did. But the figure only nodded. "I would like that. I know that. I knew that. I would get one." The frog woman did another small smile, and Delta gave a baffled look. "How?" she asked, and the frog just looked unsure. I was born knowing how to breathe. I was born knowing that we are your children. Know that we are named. Know that we are not to kill." This woman repeated some words, her eyes closed. News, answers, now please." She stuttered, and Nu vanished for a second and then reappeared. "I had to check something, but I believe it is Rail. Well, it's more accurate to say that your words and actions sounded through Rail back into the system. Rail is acting as a template for your future jungle bog people, as I think this one as well. The ones coming before influence those that come next, on some level, I guess." Delta put her hand on her cheek and frowned. "Sounds complicated. If I mess up on the first monster I summon, then the rest come out broken," she said, and Nu only dinged. The frog in front of Delta waited with a serene calmness that made Delta feel slightly shy. So, a name. Well, how about... Delta's mind wandered for a name. She threw out the first that came to her. Lady Vert Flaw. Or maybe something to do with the stars or divination. Delta mused aloud, and the frog perked up at something. Devina. Yes, Dev. Yes, I like those sounds, the frog said, sounding slightly excited. Delta blinked, but quickly joined in with the excited frog. Devina, Dev for short. Sounds, well, if that's what you think it to be called. Delta just grinned, and the frog woman seemed to embrace the name as if it were a gift. Rail's head appeared out of the river, and Delta saw him eye the new arrival, but he vanished before too long. Delta hoped that they would get along okay. She followed Dev as he began to slowly adjust to her new environment. Her new monster rushed to one of the fresh trees that Delta had just planted and bent down to examine something Delta couldn't see. "Mother, what is this springy thing? It sticks to the tree like a leech." Dev mused, and Delta, smiling, looked over her shoulder. She froze. On a new tree was a black cap that grew like a tiny ledge off the bark. It was quickly growing, its new shelf above it. "Mother, Mother!" Why are you screaming?" Dev asked in alarm. "Leave her. This is amusing on so many levels. I guess that this is a joke and an actual fact now. Ugh, her humor is bad as them mushrooms, infecting everything." Delta went into a happy place as she sat down heavily, still singing very loudly. It was a volcano where nothing made of spongy splash could survive. It made Delta very, very happy. End of chapter. There is no epic loot here, only puns. Chapter 41. Busy Little Bee. Delta eyed the screen with a twitch. Blood-curdling mushroom, the mushroom has moved down a level and evolved due to the mana strain. If devoured, the eater will suffer body convulsions, sweat, visions, and some other minor things. This will render them bedridden for a day or so, but at least this variety is no longer hazardous to burn. Still foul though, it is not fatal unless they keep eating them for some reason, but people can be that unpredictable. Well, that was just dandy. Delta dismissed the screen, just knowing that there were upgrades for the vile things waiting for her. She sighed and opened up the new box that she had made in her happy state. Delta's list of goals. Repay Dill, the farmer's son, in some way. Number 2. Make the fishing better for Rudy. Number 3. Make more levels and get an avatar. Number 4. Make the not dungeon a place for all the good people. Number 5. Figure out more about the world and where the demon child is hiding. Number 6. Destroy the evil mushrooms by any means necessary. Delta thought that it was a very reasonable list for her current state. Sadly, she hadn't grown enough food or such to be help on the farm. Not unless Dill wanted to be an apple farmer. New, is there some way to gift a pig or to make something to be taken out of the dungeon? Delta tried a new flash to his side. A monster cannot be taken out of the dungeon realm. Delta frowned, and then an idea hit her. What about a critter or something? She asked and New hesitated. Critters are just very weak monsters, animals basically, but with intelligence. They work on enhancing the dungeon in some way. I doubt they can leave either. New's words were blunt, but not unkind. He hovered over Delta's list and looked it over. The child will heal in time. Surely, you need not to worry about one human that you have fought. I already have an alert for any kind of memorial that we unlock. Surely, that is enough. Delta snapped her eyes up and stormed up to New, jabbing her finger. I will never just let this go. I lured him into the dungeon by stealing his livestock. He needed that animal, or he would have just never come for it. I can't just let this go. Delta stressed and New only floated for a second before more words appeared. Human life, it is a conundrum for us. We feed off of it, but we seek to protect it. Yes, I did not want to suggest this due to perhaps being a waste of resources, but if it makes you feel better, we have a method of giving people things that they remove from the dungeon. Rewards. The challenges have only been shown to give objects, but look it over. I'd seen no reason that it cannot be simplistic lifeform as a reward. There is even a nice spot for something referred to as mounts. I suspect dungeons can give living rewards if they advance enough. Delta blinked and then hugged the screen. New dinged in annoyance and slipped away. I feel all rough now. New, we just need to get enough pigs, or maybe just bacon, and maybe we can set a pig as a reward. I mean, we killed one pig and we got 2 boars out of it. Are you sure that we can't set a pig as a reward just now? She asked and New shivered as he tried to shake off the contact. No. We can either get the creature or use the option up for the boss choice. We will need another pig to replace the template, or, you said, enough pieces of one. Delta smiled. I'll ask Rudy. She brought me the forest last time. She reminded and New shuddered. I had sort of thought all those windows out. Next time, give her a quota and cut her off before she brings some godly pig, or mountains, or something equally Rudy. I'll ask her to take it easy. Besides, it's not just a pig. Anything that can help that family would work. I just don't have anything besides some pots and a fish that still needs to be caught. Delta said aloud and gave the blank mushroom another dirty look. Still, I have a lot of DP and a mana now. No, give me it straight. What am I lacking that could make my life easier? She walked on top of the river, a neat little trick that she managed to figure out without meaning to. A secure way to fend people off when we wish to use the core mana for greedy purposes. Well, that's why the floor is going to be a real jungle maze. I mean, the lower we go, the safer I am, right? Delta pointed out and New dinged softly. There are people who conquer dungeons in the hundreds if what Rudy said is true. But yes, The deeper we dive into the puzzles and tricks, the better I would feel. Besides that, your jungle is merely a patchy plain with a few trees. Your plants aren't exactly spreading much besides the grass. Delta looked around, and sure enough, she could see one end of the room from the other. It was meant to take this long but make a decent jungle. Flowers, they spread with pollen. Pollen gets around in various ways, like butterflies, wasps, and bees. Delta paused and knew when quiet. We forgot about bees. Jungle bee. This is a simple-minded gatherers of pollen, and the more plants and flowers on the floor, the more these workers will grow in numbers and effectiveness. The stinger may apply a local paralytic poison. It will not kill. 13 mana. No, I thought you were on top of this, Delta teased, and knew when purple, his words shrinking. I have been rather busy dealing with your illogical screeching of fungi. It would throw anyone off their game. Right, Delta smiled, and made off with 2 bees. Sure, she could debate a plan and what the bees would do in her jungle room, and see what could change, but Delta wouldn't be herself if she planned things too much. 2 tiny red strip bees appeared and buzzed curiously around. Delta cooed at their fluffiness and then moved back a little as they floated closer, with their stingers moving in a little dance. They won't die if they lose their stinger, right? Delta had to ask. New was quiet. I don't know. Maybe we bred enough monsters into them for them to be a bit more durable. We need to test that. Perhaps Rudy would like to help us out. Oh, don't be grouchy. She was just helping. Delta mused and looked at the bees flew together. Bees need a hive, but they won't be, lost without one. Delta gestured and the buzzing bees. Well, let us look at their upgrades. Perhaps something will reveal itself. Jungle bees. Ungrade stinger to be lethal in a smaller dose, 10 DP. I suspect this is not what you want. Allow bees to collect pollen faster, 13 DP. Transform one bee into the room into a jungle queen bee, 20 DP. Well, hello there, Delta. This system has come up with a pre-built bee kingdom package. All bees that lead to a secret waterfall, if pleased by the visitors. Pleased is annoyingly blank in details. I assume we'll find out. Delta was buzzing with excitement, and the hive was wonderful upgrades before her. Delta made another 2 bees just to keep the species going. It only left her with 35 mana, but that was fine for now. She picked up closer bee and hit the upgrade button. The bee twitched and began to glow. The tiny red bee grew to become almost crimson as she grew bigger and bigger. Compared to the other bees now, she was about twice the size. She took a small time to adjust to her more fine wings and width, and she settled down onto a rock and looked about. Delta got a feeling that the new bee was unimpressed with being homeless. It looked towards the source of Delta's cooing. The bee was extra fluffy, and now that she was a queen, she bowed her head a little before taking off. She floated about and looked around for a suitable area. Delta was enraptured to have such creatures in her dungeon now. She used to love watching bees when she was young. At least, she thinks she did. The queen returned and Delta got another burst of impression. The judgment was that she did not have a suitable foundation yet. The bees had nowhere to make their hive. Delta looked about in the center of the room. It would be within flying distance of all the jungle if the queen needed pollen, and the bees would be helping her jungle in many ways. So she made a single stone pillar rise in the center of the room. It groaned and thus shifted as it rose in Delta's desired height. Not enough to peer over the trees, but enough to make someone think twice before climbing it. She used her remaining mana to make it get thicker at the base and made the top of the pillar hollow with so many holes. Her mana hit a single digits, but Delta felt proud of a huge rock thing. She looked at the queen, who had watched all of this with a cool bee detachment. It flew up and around, diving into the holes and out of the other ones. It floated back down, and Delta felt relief fill her as the queen sent gratitude towards her. No worries, have fun being queen. Lizzie, she called after the queen as she and her 3 bees got to work. Delta liked to imagine a golden-topped pillar that sweet honey within it that would slightly leak that considered a landmark for travelers. Well, your ecosystem takes one step away from being madness towards sense. Bees are important. Thankfully, since most things here do not need to kill each other, we don't need insects to clean up the mess. Plants are barely wither, and trees will not topple, nor bees will die. Too much. Delta paused, and waving, and looked at Nu. What do you mean? She asked suspiciously, and Nu went purple. How much do you know about how baby bees are made? Nu sounded casual, which instantly made her more suspicious. Nothing. Why? She paused, and Nu just vanished. Nu? What happens during bee sex? Delta yelled, and Davina, nearby, dropped the rocks that she had been gathering in line of the river. She gaped at Delta, and the only made Delta even more worried. She floated up to the hive, and, feeling like a creep, watched the bees work. Queen Lizzie laid in the central platform and watched as the bees work. She was wiggling, and Delta was worried, before the queen began to lay eggs. And that's enough nature for me today. Delta squeaked and flew away. She landed near the waterfall with a pink face. Sure, it was just what the bees did naturally. None of the other monsters did a life thing. Delta muttered, and Nu appeared with a flash. The bees have a strict number limit. Once they hit that limit, all the eggs become inert. I suspect if we wish for them to produce multiple hives around the jungle, but that may cause some odd mutations and even turf wars. Critters are smart, but they are still under the sway of animal instincts at times. We still have 153 DP to use. I think we should continue to add to the dungeon, so I suspect that we admit that there is simply nothing on the floor to actually cause any problems to people besides a river. Delta looked over that high, giant room. I was thinking some side rooms, but you're right. I need to start making something here to draw attention of the people, or we'll just march on. Well, what attracts adventurers? Delta asked, and Nu made a soft ding noise. Shiny things. True enough. Delta moved around and floated up to get the aerial view of the giant room. She closed her eyes, and years of mind-numbing TV came back to her in the haunting scenes. People falling with simple puzzles, idiots unable to do simple platforming. Ugh. Delta shivered and grinned in Game Master. Golden monkey statues haunted her conscience, and a spark of devious took over. She opened her eyes and saw a jungle. Not as an empty room, but a space filled with potential. First, she needed her end goal. She moved to the furthest wall and decided to make the new room right in the middle. The gobs would be back soon, and a lot of current ideas needed mana to carve the rooms out. She would need the mana for all placement of the objects that she would need. DP was rather useless until mana had done its job. So, she looked around to see if there were any options that had unlocked themselves. Rail was busy raising heavy rocks from the river, and Delta opened the menu involving the Frog Tribesman. Frog Tribesman Rail. Evolve into Frog Warrior, a frog man who has taken the art of fighting to the next level, 15 DP. Frog Shadow. A man who can be one with the jungle shadows, 15 DP. Frog Witch Doctor. A frog who can bend nature of the jungle, 15 DP. Frog Chieftain, Rare, the leader of the Frog Tribesmen. It gains bonuses when the tribe thrives. Only one may exist at a time, 20 DP. Unique Opportunity, challenges 2 out of 10. Upgrade Spear to hold the jungle bee's poison, 10 DP. Grant weak poison resistance to any plant grown in the jungle, 28 DP. Delta was impressed. Rail had options, and the frog was still diving after rocks. Rail, do you want to be a frog that hits hard, sneaks, or curses people through both figuratively or literally? Boss people around, or do something special that I have no idea about? Delta called, and Rail paused. I want to rescue idiot people who fall into the river, Great Mother. He said with pride, and Delta looked at the options and then nodded. All right, you just need to keep doing the good work. And if some lifeguard option comes up, we'll talk about it. Are you happy? Do you need anything? Delta asked before she left, and Rail looked around and then shrugged softly. I need better things to rescue. I need better and faster. Rail kneeled. Stronger, Delta finished without pausing, and Rail agreed. You need workout gear. Human-shaped dummies. Okay, I'll keep that in mind. I just need to get some more mana. You hang tight and I'll be back with a brand new spanking frog gym before you know it. Delta promised, and clearing her throat, spoke. Stone dumbbell. Creation. Stone dumbbell added to list. Wooden bench. Creation. Wooden bench added to list. Ugh, this is going to take forever. Nu, is there a way to set an auto-discovery or something? Delta asked, and Nu thought about it. Try this. Creation. All common items related to a gym. This will only work if you know the items. It won't create things that you do not know or have no idea how it works. Yeah, because that would be far too easy. Delta replied dryly. Creation, all common items related to a gym. She called and Rail watched with interest. There was a tire pause as a screen appeared. Gym item subsection being created. Process will be slowed to prevent mental deterioration. Oh sweet, it worked. Let's see. Delta opened the gym section and saw items appear slowly one after another. This should do for now. Delta hit the menu for 4 mana, and 2 stone dumbbells appeared, hitting the ground with a heavy thud. Rail approached with wide eyes. He reached down and lifted, and paused as he had to actually put effort into his act. Delta didn't have enough mana for the iron ones yet, and she hoped that Rail would like these ones. Mother, I am not worthy, Rail whispered, and Delta just beamed. The frogman began to lift, once, then twice, and then began to alternate his flexing. The skin bulged as already impressive muscles began to feel the strain. Challenge 3 out of 5 completed. Delta blinked and then smiled at the screen. You can do it, she cheered as she watched Rail really begin to pump the weights at a speed that she sure wasn't needed. Sitting down near the waterfall, she opened up the deep pool menu before it, noticing there was not a river menu but something entirely new. Abyss pool. Allow lumen mushrooms to grow underwater and light up the tunnel if tribute is paid. Turn them into new species, 20 DP. Place a monster inside as a guardian. Available monsters, Frog Tribesman, Crayclaw, and Mutated Silvertail, 20 DP. Purchase a randomly generated guardian for the pool. Cannot be undone, 19 DP. I don't know how I feel about the system offering me a gamble. Delta said aloud and New dinged in agreement. It could be a pure killer, not by choice. Some monsters are just lethal by existence. It could also be useless or shy. I'm almost upset at myself to offer such a roll of the dice. I do like gambling games. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? I get a cool monster that might open up all sorts of paths. I mean, it's not like I'm going to be getting some convenient S-class mermaid, sea fairy, or something. First, this is a lottery, not a wish fulfillment device. Also, if this doesn't work out, there is plenty of fish in the sea. Delta pointed out and tapped the screen. Are we doing wordplay now? Good grief. 19 DP vanished from the form, began to take shape in the pool. Delta watched with anticipation. Come on, cute turtle. Mama feels lucky. Delta called and the water began to bubble. Then the thing appeared, rising up like a column of yellow ridges and 2 large black pinches. It wiggled back and forth, and the water rained down around them. It snapped, then shut in the steel trap. It turned to where Delta was and made some unholy shrieking noise. Delta screeched back, making the worm wiggle in a greeting. Delta fled. New silently showed her the text that appeared. Not that Delta did anything but run into a tree. Still screeching. Abyss worm, a harmless bobbit worm that has gone under extreme growth from blue mana exposure, and is now the new guardian. Congratulations. End of chapter. There is no epic lucha, only puns. Chapter 42. The Little Things. You cannot hide up there forever. Delta was idly petting one of the spiders with a shaky finger. These aren't so bad, I mean, compared to some things. They're just multi-legged hamsters. Delta laughed nervously as the spider scuttled off, insulted. No, wait, Delta said, and stood up to rush through the non-existing dust off her skirt. No, I'll go back down eventually. I just need to get over the fact that I gambled and summoned the Hellworm of the Blood Sea of Mars. Delta sighed, waved her hands, and Nu scoffed in his flesh. It's your monster, and I, for one, am greatly pleased to have such a capable monster under our control, due to the simple fact that it does not have googly eyes or fluffy behind. You dislike it. Delta put her hands on her hips, narrowing her eyes. Don't make me sound so bad. I'm not used to worms bigger than my arm, or bigger than me for that matter, and I'm not used to them looking like they were born in some evil research lab for monsters. Delta argued, and Nu dinged. Well, if we think about it, we technically are a monster laboratory. Nu joked, and it made Delta give up her petulant argument. How about we just do some needed work on this floor and give the bees a chance to get to work on our new trees and time to drop some acorns? She offered and hid a smile. Knew it was rather complicated being, but it was there if something was a little blocks loved. More than anything, it was upgrading the dungeon. Well, it would be a wise choice. Very well, let us get on with this before you accidentally summon some four-headed goat monstrosity from the grass, or something equally mundane. Delta grumbled and then went to the pond, flexing her fingers. No monsters, just nice little fishies. She whispered and was about to get to work when her gobs returned. Hob carrying 2 buckets on a stick, while Gob was dragged by a bundle of plants, eggs, berries, and the dungeon in a sack. "Master, where is gone?" Hob grunted, and there was something of interest. Gob stretched. "Spiders look angry. So much more." He added happily, and Delta closed her eyes and slowly inhaled. "Oh, delivery monsters. Much better." "New, I swear, I'll drown you," she threatened, and New just dinged cheerfully away. Delta thanked her goblins for their work and let them go to take a break at the goblin camp. Thankfully, her goblins had already killed anything in the buckets. Simply emptying them onto the ground caused her dungeon to devour the fading life. The additions weren't amazing, but there was the tiny things that really spruced places up. Stick reeds added, tiny brown fish added, moss fish added, aquatic insects added, duckweed added. This was welcome as it boosted her mana to a decent 24, and this gave her some more things to do. Delta chapped her chin, wondering when someone else would come to her dungeon. Just 1 or 2 would get a great for her mana gathering. "Vass, there are now children at the door requesting you." Japes called over to Vass. It tried to bury itself deeper into its work. "I'm very busy, master. Perhaps another time." Vass responded in his high tone. Japes paused and eyed the frantic golem's hands, not actually doing anything except looking busy. Interesting. He leaned down and purred as he spoke. Vass froze as if a predator was now lurking over it. Smart child. "Vass, are you ignoring these people?" "Why is that?" Japes asked curiously, and Vass shook his head. "I don't want to go outside. The loud one thinks that I'm his friend," Vass explained with annoyance, and Japes was startled to see the display of open emotion. It wasn't swaying or the blank acceptance. "Are you not? You had an adventure together." "No." "They do build bonds of companionship." Japes commented lightly as he made Vass shiver. "I don't think that I want these bonds. I am simply to help the fungi stop bewitching the art of pottery." "No, that." Vass tried to explain, and Japes was absolutely delighted. The usually unflappable child was trying to wiggle out of a social interaction. "Ah, I understand, Vass." Japes smiled brightly, and then the golem looked up, looking relieved at Japes's words. Japes picked it up, opened up the front door, and neatly deposited Vass at the feet of the grinning child, Dio. "Have Vass back before dinner, if you will," he warned, and Dio saluted. "I swear. Come, Vass. Really promise to take us back into the dungeon." Dio spoke, and Japes felt one of his ears ache before Dio physically dragged Vass away, able to ignore the golem's polite but futile resistance. Scary child. Japes felt his monstrous grin appear as they turned the corner. His golem was developing faster than he could ever have imagined. The spawn of the people around him had a purpose of other than to annoy him. He simply must thank the dungeon for providing ample fertile room for his child to grow. Maybe he'd give it one of his old pots that he barely cared for. Japes was sure whatever laid within the pots he barely touched would be barely worth the risk or danger. Probably. Maybe. Japes went back to reselling one of the captured prizes. It had outgrown its current pot. "I see fresh people and are very busy around here," Seth commented, and Dio dragged Vass past them. Quiz watched as the golem go a little limp and give Quiz a wave. He returned it half-heartedly. "They're going to the dungeon. Really seems to be growing attached to the little goblins." He sniffed and Seth nodded. "Goblins are very attackable, but you said dungeon is, how do you speak, kind?" He tried and Quiz nodded. "Yeah, Delta, the core, does not kill." He stressed his words and Seth followed him, and he began to lead Seth around the village. "Dungeon is not normal. It does not harm," he said seriously, and Quiz almost missed his step. "Oh, trust me, she does. She does not harm. Delta likes people. She makes her monsters talk to us, and even lets Rudy fish in her pond," Quiz explained, and Seth choked. "Rudy, do what in the what?" "I feel Rudy must not overexcite her person in such a way. I think we should reason with her, and such dances do not Seth trailed off and Kuss started blankly at him for several seconds. Ruli does not henyop and the chanyops. He tried, and Seth's eyes lit up. Ah, Ruli swings meaty staff at seabirds, Seth said sagely, and Kuss felt his lips twitch, as a nostalgic for the old magic school days of how long behind him. Yeah, sure, close enough. Come on, I'll show you where the inn is. Prices are fair, but the owner is particular about how you pay, he explained. Seth looked worried. I did not bring gold or objects of proposal, he said, and Quiz knew what the man had counted as bunking with Quiz. Quiz was all for it, except for the fact that Seth had taken a very peculiar course in his secondary education in magic school. Dream oracling, the near future or the past. In other words, the man rambled about imminent near doom on a micro scale all night, and no one would room with him, except possibly the Shadowmancer in 5C. That guy seemed to love it. Trust me, Sana is fair. Just expect to do things that might make you feel a little nervous. Quiz beamed and made Seth pale. Words or not, he found Quiz's expression to be all too clear. First up was a sly but bright yellow belly cod. Delta tapped open the menu and examined it. Yellow belly cod increases the richness of its meat 3 DP. Allow the fish to respawn faster 3 DP. Evolve the fish. Golden scaled fish. A fish covered in a glimmering golden scales. Tastes good but a little bit faster. It is very good ingredient for grilling 10 DP. Delta liked the fact that there was no option to give them venom or make them toxic. It was rather refreshing. She hit the evolve and the fish glowed. The yellow on their belly turned more dark in color and spread across the fish's body. When the light show died down, the fish swam in dazzle of the light that the even dim lumen mushrooms could only make look delicious. The silvertail examined his new friend and swam around in excitement. Delta checked the new menu. Golden scale fish. Make fish respawn faster 6 DP. Make scales harder and valuable 8 DP. Make the meat to give a slight effect of enhanced looks for a short period 10 DP. Evolution locked. Delta eyed the last option. A locked evolution. There was only a few reasons Delta could think of that would cause it. The fish itself needed a round to resist being caught. Delta herself was lacking something, or Delta just wasn't able to provide what the evolution needed. It could be one or all of the above, but Delta just put it aside for now. Happy to have upgraded the fish. She selected the next one on her list, the scuttling crayfish, who looked excited as new things appeared in the pond. Crayfish, make it respawn faster 3 DP. Make the meat inside taste better. Evolve the fish. Snapper crayfish. This crafty critter can snap in cheap lines and make diving in to catch fish with bare hands risky. 8 DP. Delta smiled and hit the evolve button, making the red crayfish turn blue and its claws glow, elongated. The feelers on its head looked like a fine wire. Delta cheered and was about to select the next fish when a screen appeared. Congratulations on having evolved 3 fish. You have unlocked a deep pond upgrade and a figure of your own core room. Delta blinked and then opened the pond room menu without a word. A few things that had appeared since the last purchased everything. Pond room. Deep pond upgrade special. Double the space of the room and the pond without disturbing dungeon layout. Doubles all fish currently in pond 30 pp. Crossbreeding. Allow fish to breed with each other and form potential unique offspring 30 dp. Allow the brave to swim in a secret tunnel below and exit out above the waterfall on the second level. Must have caught either silvertail or the golden scale fish to access the tunnel 25 dp. Delta felt stunned for a while, and then she began to laugh cheerfully. This was amazing. I can't see why having a path around Fran is something to be excited about. Not everyone is going to be able to fight. I have a boss room, but I think this dungeon should be equal opportunity. So if you can't bait and win out of Fran, maybe you can hook some success with fishing and earn your way onto the second floor. This is incredible. It says those who caught, not those who have those fish in their possession. People can't just buy their way down into the second floor. I see. A path for those dedicated to fishing may progress in another way. It makes me question what other options this floor will produce for the unable to fight to progress. Delta shrugged and purchased the deep pond, then the tunnel without a thought. The room began to stretch, and the walls seemed to take several large steps back. Her already decent large pond room became a small hall with a glimmering pond in the middle. Waddles looked around the alcove and grew slightly. "Quack," he grumbled and went back to sleep. Delta looked at a barren floor and some rocks. She spent just a tiny bit of mana to install some grass, and it looked better. "I still have no idea where the tunnel leads." Delta muttered and sighed. It was just so relaxing to sit by the pond, feel the fish move past her feet, the solid arm-sized pinches just grazing where she was sitting. Delta's eyes shot open and looked down. A giant worm thing from the second-floor hole looked up at her, its iris-faced gaping mouth slightly poking out of the water. It looked naked without being buried in the slit and dirt, but it wriggled in greeting before it tiredly drifted back down, a small, round hole that Delta couldn't see until the worm vanished back down into it, presumably back onto the second floor. Delta felt herself calmly stand up, pulling her feet out of the water and stiffly walk away. It had come to say hello. It had moved through her. It had no eyes. Delta swallowed and managed a weak smile. "It's friendly. That's good," she managed. She walked fast and stiffly and made it to Fran's room where there wasn't any water. Delta chided herself for being a coward towards a rather friendly deathworm, but she couldn't help it. She needed some time to get her bearings around the thing. It was good to know if someone unsavory types did sneak past in the tunnels, she had some form of defense waiting. The waterfall did empty into the outside of the abyss pool, after all. Fran's door looked at her, and the line between the sides of the door cut down in the middle of a menacing boar with tusks acting as carved handles and pushed the door open. On top, Fran's visage stared down, gleaming orange gems for eyes. The door was made of some dark metal that felt hot to the touch. The greater Mushi seemed to be moved closer to it and enjoyed the heat. Delta moved through the door and stood in the now much improved boss room. All around her, lining the edges of the room, and rows of actual carved stone seats. Slight stairs made reaching the top easier. The whitish sand looked firmer and less like it had been kicked up and moved through. Delta willed the room to work, and from the door the torches in the stone pillars burst into light. Another 2 on either side of the room, then again, until the 2 torches standing on either side of Fran's gate lit up. The crisscrossing metal gate lifted slowly, creaking like a coming warning. Delta was impressed at the ominous image as the stone boar statue above the door lit 2 hidden torches and eye sockets, making it look demonic. Fran walked out and Bacon at his side. Delta's heart lit up as his unharmed state. Fran grinned as Bacon happily kicked some of the sand in a playful manner. The pig zoomed off in a high on sugar. This was great. I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw it." Fran began, and Delta just rubbed her back, and her head and her cheeks went pink. "It was nothing. You deserved it after how well you did." Delta praised, and Fran crossed his arms and looked away.
"I lost, but I do not regret. Will you let me fight again?"
he asked with such hope that Delta felt her heart hurt a little. "Sure, anyone can challenge you, after all. Just don't go overboard and become bloodthirsty," she warned, and Fran rolled his eyes, but a grin grew.
"I need practice my entrance. Graham will be spreading my legend. Many people will come, and I can't wait to send them scampering."
He cackled, and Delta blamed Nu for the goblin's evil laugh. It just seemed something that Nu would encourage. "I'll be back later. I'm glad you're alive," Delta called, and Fran looked confused.
"I never die unless you die, which will never happen because I will guard you."
Fran laughed merrily, and Delta smiled as she left the room to pause at the goblin's camp. Num and Billy were stacking pots as Mr. Mushy happily sat listening to Swaz wax his love for the eternal fire. Odd fellows, but Delta loved them all. "I have a suggestion, if you would hear it." Delta jumped, but turned to see Nu hovering near the goblin hut that was neatly pushing back against the wall. "You have my attention, number 2. Delta joked, and Nu ignored her timely reference and opened up the map and drew himself. It looked identical to the current layout that Delta had known, except one corridor. It connected the back of the storeroom to the goblin camp. Seems nice, but kinda defeats the purpose of the other rooms. Delta pointed out and Nu made a quick adjustment, writing next to the passage in big, bold letters. Secret passage. Oh, that makes sense, but how do we make a secret passage? Delta wondered and knew made a noise that sounded like a small horn. I simply expect you to try it and for an option to appear. Simply design the idea of secret. I do it myself, and I feel unwell when I try to go near the room construction option. I feel like there's a borderline usurping of your position, and I do not want to see what would happen if I pursued it. I took a look, and I feel like you should upgrade the storeroom to make it work better. Delta looked down at New with a concern, but didn't voice them when New was building in mode. He would just get irritated. Okie dokie. Later, guys. She waved to the monsters, who all called back in various ways. A quick jaunt later, and she stood in her somewhat cluttered storeroom. Storeroom. Upgrade the size of the room to be double the size without disturbing the space of the dungeon. 20 DP. Allow all containers to be repaired when the dungeon is empty or if it's not stolen. 15 DP. Upgrade the walls to be more solid and respectable. Solid wood panels. 20 DP. Increase the amount of mana gained by the mana event. 70 DP. It was a decent selection, and Delta guessed that she hadn't really done too much with the room for it to be offering so many options, but Delta visibly winced at the mana event purchase. That was more DP than she was willing to pay right now. It just gave her a measly 1 mana for the upgrade. Delta shivered as she pushed through away. No gambling on upgrades for the unseen future. Delta tried to stay firm in that decision. She picked the wall upgrade for now, and it would work better with his new plan. All around, the loosely packed dirt and loose boards shimmered with a glow. Solid wood panels and proper wooden planks now formed the wall and floor. It looked really nice, and Delta beamed. She made a corridor and bent it into an L shape and connected it to the goblin room and the storeroom. The openly exposed dirt tunnel made the storeroom look odd, so she opened the menus again. Secret, disguised, hidden, false wall. Don't let anyone see this, Delta chanted, and the menu appeared. Storeroom. Upgrade the size of the room to be double the size without disturbing the space of the dungeon. 20 DP. Allow all containers to repair when the dungeon is empty if not stolen. 15 DP. Increase the amount of mana gained from the mana event. 70 DP. Place a fake wall over the corridor. Can be opened by setting a trigger. 15 DP. Delta jumped, cheering at her apparent mastery of the system. She purchased it, and the wall and a perfect replica of the rest appeared. Delta saw a new screen appear, choosing opening method, unknown. Delta thought about it and then summoned New. It's all your idea, so you should choose. Delta grinned, and New was quiet for a moment. Thank you. I shall accept the task. Torch on the wall is silly. Simply pushing it will reveal it to many people. I think we should set the trigger as a simple knock and a password. It is no actual defense. Someone can, with force, break through if they wish. For now, knock once and say, Mother Delta. No person will say it other than monsters. Delta blinked at the request and the screen flashed as it accepted the trigger. She moved through it and saw the similar door on the other side. This one was disguised as a rough stone wall of a goblin hut. Must be the same opening trigger. She mused and invited Billy over. Giving him clear instructions, Billy knocked and spoke the password. The fake wall swung open silently, and there was a pause as Soa whooped with excitement, and he no longer had to worry about the mudroom. The tunnels was smooth, but Delta noticed that there was a little nub that formed near the middle. An almost turn-off. Delta guessed that she hadn't focused enough when forming the tunnel. Then she eyed the space and wondered what to do with it. Kinda lonely in here. I doubt anyone would want to be in here. Delta mused, and then came a tug. She turned and followed it to see the greater Mushi coiled up and waiting. It looked like it had packed its life together and was waiting for some cab to catch to the airport. It tugged again, and Delta eyed it. You want to go into the tunnel? She tried, and the Mushi's eyes glowed red. It seemed it relished the idea of isolation, or possibly just peace and quiet. What would you do in there? She wondered, and the greater Mushi put a few stones down and tapped them, making a quiet thudding noise. It would entertain itself. It would tap rocks to make music. Delta guessed that was all the reason it needed. She spent some mana to lift the monster up and sent it into the passage. It fit snugly into the little nub. Delta was glad to see it and stretched out to explore the new surroundings. she eyed the tiny rocks on the objects that used to make music. Feeling like she was a bed caretaker, she focused on a set of drums, a small copper harp with a thin wire that wasn't tuned and it sounded a little rough, but Delta wondered if she could ask Rudy to get her a piano. The plant took some tentative smacks on the drum and then froze at the clear banging noise. It hit it again, and one vine played across the harps. It definitely was rough, but Mushy seemed to shiver. Delta smiled and walked away. The secret passage closed, and once it did, the sounds of drums echoed throughout the storeroom, and the goblin camp, and the sound traveled to the meeting pond room. It sounded like a war drum, and the spiders all raised 2 legs and did their ceremonial war dance, and the goblins looked relaxed. Fran roared and yelled for more as he practiced his lance jabs. Delta could only smile sheepishly at New's disapproving box. It's just a drum. It won't be too bad, she promised, and New only moved closer to her face. Gamble, giant worm, you, screaming. Delta made a face and stubbornly enjoyed the drumming. She was sure, absolutely sure, that the drumming and music was harmless fun. All around the dungeon, the mushrooms perked up as if for cold. The lumen mushrooms glowed slightly brighter, the edible mushrooms looked fresher, and the gut rots curled up and looked nasty. Deep down, on the second floor, the black, blood-curdling mushrooms seemed to dance. End of chapter. That, my friends, concludes this episode. I hope that you enjoyed. If you wish to support the author of the story, there will be a link below. If you wish to support this channel, there are multiple ways to do so, which will all also be linked below. But the easiest way would be to subscribe and share my videos as much as possible. And until next time, I hope you all have a good one. And I'll see you all in the next video. Cheers.